Hey everyone, Doug here with B&H. Guess who's got another new camera to feast their eyes upon? This guy. The S5 continues Panasonic's mirrorless full-frame lineup, but this time it's got a lot going on in a much smaller package than before. 4K 60p video, 10-bit 422 color, dual card slots, all from a full-frame sensor, and believe it or not, it's actually a little bit smaller than the GH5. So here it is, the Panasonic S5. This is the latest in the S-series lineup, successor now to the S1, S1R, and S1H. While I have been impressed by the line so far, especially the S1H, one very fair issue with them has been the sheer size of the cameras. Now, as you can see, it's smaller than all three of those cameras, which is nice because, speaking personally as a GH5 shooter, this comfortably fits in your hand. It's much lighter overall. In fact, it's a little bit smaller than that camera. Now, feature-wise, this is a hybrid camera through and through. At 24.2 megapixels, still images have enough resolution for prints, and using the same sensor found in the S1, overall image quality is fantastic. Still image features such as HLG photos and in-camera high-resolution stitching also make their way here, along with AF performance improvements across the board. Video-wise, the S5 blends a lot of the key features from its predecessors. Naturally, you get 4K video here up to 60 FPS, though 10-bit 422 recording only goes up to 30 FPS. So while there are some limitations here, which we'll get into in a bit, don't worry, there's also a surprising amount of professional features in here that let you get a lot more out of the camera if you choose to, such as anamorphic capabilities similar to the S1H, and vlog out of the box. So still images are superb on the S5. Colors are natural and never feel exaggerated, which is something I've always loved with Panasonic's colors. Colors in objects such as flowers are saturated without looking exaggerated, while contrast, especially rolling into the highlights, never feels harsh. Fine detail is also very clear, even in JPEG mode, as you can see in the grass here. And that probably has a lot to do with the fact that the sensor has no optical low-pass filter. So let's jump into it. We're gonna see how jewelry is made today. I have Ariel here. She is a jewelry maker and fine artist, and she has a store on Etsy called Ash Studio Design. So you can find all of the works you've been seeing here in this video on her store there. So as far as video is concerned, there's a lot going on here, and I wanted to test it out in a sort of cinematic documentary style. All right, let's set up the camera for the day. In here you can see we already have most of our quality settings changed. We already have manual mode. I'm just gonna look at photo styles for a sec. Now we have standard, vivid, natural, flat, landscape, portrait, monochromes, a few modes, all the Cine-like modes as well, like 709 and vlog, which we're going to use today. So I'm going to set that up. Now, just keep in mind, this is the full vlog. This is full 14 plus stop vlog. It's compatible with vlog L, so if you need to cut between cameras that use vlog L, like say the GH5, you should have no problem doing that whatsoever. For filmmakers in particular, this is now the easiest way to get the full vlog V-gamut experience on a full frame body. Record quality. We're going to go 4K 24p. You can see here 422 10-bit. This is my codec of choice for pretty much any Panasonic camera. It's a good balance between space and quality, and you still get 10-bit recording, which is essential for me. Just a quick note though, you do need to be in MOV to get most of those options. If you switch to MP4, you do get some different options though. You get a 72 megabit HEVC recording option, which could save you some space if you need to, if you really need to maximize your SD cards, for example. But I'm gonna go back to MOV and stick with 4K 24p. Internal UHD 4K 60p records in 10-bit 420. This is an important distinction because while it's not 422, I would argue that the bit depth being 10-bit is far more important than the color subsampling, especially if you're not delivering this footage beyond the web. Bring the camera down to 4K 30p and you can indeed record in 10-bit 422, though there is a 30-minute record limit in either of these modes. Like the GH5, 10-bit 422 4K 60p can be achieved through the HDMI port. Now, there is no intra mode on this camera, though speaking personally, I rarely ever shoot with intra mode, and I do find Panasonic's 10-bit 150 megabit mode to hold up for nearly everything. One of the best features to come over to the S5, though, is the dual native ISO. Yes, it's here. Dual native ISO gives the S5 stunning low-light performance in both video and stills, though the version seen here is a little different from the one that you might see in the S1H. The camera automatically switches between the low and high gain stages, so there's no manual control over where the camera will switch. However, in Vlog, ISO 4000 will bring you over to the high ISO mode, and as you can see here, it's far cleaner than ISO 3200, which is right below it. After that point, the camera remains in high gain mode, and you can crank it all the way to 51,200. For less controlled environments, this is a lifesaver. In this shot here, I had to quickly ramp up the ISO to 5,000 to reach this underlit part of the floor. The shot is super clean and even has room for grading. We have change in the mode dial. Now, the mode dial unfortunately does not have a locking mechanism, but it doesn't change too easily, so it shouldn't be an issue for you. The biggest change though is that the movie mode switches over to an SNQ or slow and quick mode, which is a dedicated mode just for slow motion and fast motion recording. So you no longer have to dive through menus to necessarily get to that point. Now in 4K in this mode, the camera can record up to 60 FPS or up to 180 FPS in 1080p. Under-cranking frame rates are also available should you choose to get an exaggerated sped-up look. You'll also be glad to know that continuous AF still works in SNQ mode. Now, video quality is a huge part of any camera, there's no denying that, but it's the assist functions that can either make a camera a little more than a high-quality sensor in a box or a professional, reliable workhorse in your kit. The S5, like many of the cameras before it, excels here. So a shot like this, you could probably guess that this is kind of impossible, or at least very difficult to pull off in most circumstances. Now we do have some lights trying to fill out the shadows just a little bit to balance things out and make it a little easier to capture with the camera's dynamic range. But I do like to push things to their limit. I do like to test things out, and so we're gonna run with this and see just how much we can pull out of those highlights blasting through the windows, especially given that there's some new monitoring tools in the S5 that'll help us do that. Now, there are waveform monitor tools, there's zebra patterns, but something that's probably the coolest option is the luminance spot meter. So I'm going to turn that on, and what you basically get is a movable spot meter that tells you how many stops over middle gray you are. Now over here, it's +3 stops on what looks to be the hottest portion, plus 3.3, what looks to be one of the hotter portions of the frame. I believe we have to stay within about 6 stops, plus 6 stops, in order to bring it down if we wanted to. So for this, we're actually pretty good. We can go with this, and we can probably save it in post. Of course, you're not going to see it, nor am I, until the video's finished. So hopefully we both like it. A record frame indicator makes it clear when you're recording, and frame guides can help you compose the image for a variety of aspect ratios. It's not my thing, but vloggers and anyone producing for social media will love the 1:1 and 9:16 guides, plus the camera can tag video for vertical orientation as well. Over in the cinema world though, the S5 has one particular feature that makes it stand out: 4:3 anamorphic recording. What you're looking at now is an APS-C crop of the sensor, and the reason I've gone with that is because I want to show you another feature. So if I go into the menu here, you can see there is an anamorphic 4:3 option. Right now it's disabled. This has anamorphic, which is awesome. It was carried over from the S1H. The difference here though is that it has to fit within the APS-C frame. So that brings us kind of to the Academy style of APS-C shooting. This is actually, if anything, closer to how it would be done on Super 35 film. So I'm going to change this to the 24p, again, 422 10-bit setting, and this is anamorphic, but that has nothing to do really with the camera itself, aside from previewing. In this case, what we're really just going for is an open gate. I don't have an anamorphic lens on me to test, but as you can see, this is a completely true 4:3 image within the APS-C portion of the sensor. So technically cropped compared to full frame, but compared to an APS-C widescreen or 16:9, this is a true 4:3 representation, and so you can truly use anamorphic lenses with this. There are multiple D-squeeze ratios available from 1.3 times to 2 times, covering the variety of anamorphic lenses out there. This is reciprocated in the live view, which offers anamorphic D-squeeze as well. You know, an option like this would allow you to not only shoot in 4:3 if you want, for something a little more retro, but also you can use this to compose a widescreen frame in post. Not just a 16:9, but also a 2.35 to 1, 2.39 to 1, something like that. Panasonic's AF has been improved in almost every regard here, especially in stills, with many changes occurring under the hood. Using native glass only, I found that almost all my shots were keepers, and AFC mode in particular was snappy. Humans and animals were recognized as well, which is great for my feline friends. Improved real-time detection and doubled face detection speeds result in much faster AF tracking overall. In fact, body tracking itself has been increased from 12 FPS to 60 FPS, meaning the S5 keeps up with a lot more movement. Anything where there's not a ton of motion going around, you can reliably use autofocus on the S5. It's really good for shots like this because, you know, at full frame, such a shallow depth of field right now, even the slightest movements will be thrown out just a little bit. So it's always good to have this just as kind of an insurance to have tack sharp images. But given I don't typically use AF in my shooting style, I did try to incorporate tracking mode on certain shots to keep the pendant in focus, and it held up very well. Now, interestingly, in the APS-C mode, AF performance does tend to be much faster, so this is definitely an option for those who absolutely need AF in video. The interesting thing about the S5 is how it feels like an evolutionary step of multiple Panasonic cameras, not just the S series. That means that when we talk about this camera, the ergonomics, menus, and overall usability, that it counts for a lot if you're already in that ecosystem. Full disclosure, I'm a Panasonic GH5 shooter myself, so I speak having worked within that system for years now. I'm very comfortable with it. You could almost call this a mini S1H in a GH5 body. I use the high resolution mode to take extremely clear and detailed product shots, which were perfect for the jewelry in this case. This mode returns to the S5 with more fine control over the process, where you can choose an in-camera JPEG mode instead of just RAW, and 2 different motion blur processing modes that help reduce and assist motion blur when you're taking pictures where parts of the frame may still move slightly, like say a bridge over moving water. Over in my backyard, I was able to test out the live view composite mode at night. It's a very interesting mode that allows you to continuously composite new exposures in real time, displaying the output of those combined exposures on the live view. The image literally builds up in camera, as you can see here, allowing you to composite faster exposures successively. The result is that you can reduce light pollution in night skies when doing astrophotography, since you won't have your shutter open as long. You could also give yourself the creative freedom to do wild light painting effects, as I've done here. So on the backside here, we have the usual Panasonic style layout. We have the exposure wheels in the top, along with the back wheel, and a completely flip out articulated LCD screen. Now this is just a little bit darker than previous screens, but the colors are much more accurate, I have to say, and that's especially helpful given the full dynamic range that you do have on the camera. Now obviously this utilizes full frame L-mount glass, so it's not quite the same, but run and gun shooters will appreciate the smaller camera body. The menu system is similar to the previous S-series cameras as well, with full touch control and navigation. By the way, the quick menu is a huge help here as always. So I think I speak for everyone when I say that once you use in-body image stabilization, there's no going back. Especially for telephoto shooting. Honestly, I wasn't even planning to shoot this piece handheld at all, but given the tight space, along with some of the shots that I was itching to get, I just had to get off the tripod. Dual IS2 returns here, offering 6.5 stops of stabilization, though there is a little more flexibility here for different shooting styles or gear. For instance, you can now switch between optical image stabilization or body image stabilization when using third-party lenses. It's one of the most effective stabilization systems I've ever seen, which is even more impressive when you consider that it's on a full-frame sensor. None of these shots have had stabilization added in post, and as you can see, my grip and the angles I'm shooting don't lend themselves to steady shooting at all. So over here on the side, we have two card slots. These are both SDXC slots. Now, only the first one is a UHS 2 slot. The bottom one is a UHS 1 slot. Now, for those wondering, this does not mean that you'll have any issue recording video. Since there's no intra-recording mode on the camera, you don't actually need a UHS 2 recording option for that. The UHS 2 option on slot 1 is mainly for burst recording with raw images. Now on the left side, we have headphone and mic jacks as usual, though when it comes to sound, filmmakers will appreciate the S5 is compatible with the DMW XLR1 XLR adapter. Right below that, not a full size unfortunately, but a micro HDMI connection. And then finally, a USB Type-C, which can be used both to charge the battery and to power the camera itself. Now, if you have a power bank or an AC adapter that can deliver 27 watts or more over USB-C, you should be able to just power the camera completely over the USB-C cable. So that means you no longer need that dummy battery solution if you want to wall power the camera. With less capable power banks, you can still charge the battery through USB-C as we've done here, or slow down the camera's drain on its own battery, thus extending your operating time, which we also did here. By the way, another connection to the G series is the new battery in the S5, the DMW BLK22. What's interesting about this is that it's actually backwards compatible with not the S1, but the GH5, GH5S, and G9, meaning you can use these new batteries for those cameras if you still have them in your kit. It's a great way to consolidate things. Just so you know though, the batteries from those cameras are not compatible with the S5. Going along with the new battery is a new charger, the DMW BTC15, and a new battery grip, the DMW BGS5. Panasonic's tripod grip, the DMW SHGR1, will also work with the S5. So I have to say, I wasn't expecting a lot of these features to trickle down into the S5, so I'm pleasantly surprised. It's an incredible all-around hybrid camera that I think will especially please those who primarily shoot video, but also want a camera that can take high-quality stills with a lot of creative options at their disposal. The video quality honestly rivals its higher-end siblings, and the cinema and monitoring options make it a fantastic choice for filmmakers as well. So that's it for the Panasonic Lumix S5. I'm Doug with B&H, and I'll see you next time. Wait. There's one more thing. If you thought the S5 was a capable video camera now, just wait until you hear about this. In a later firmware update, Panasonic will add raw output over HDMI to the S5, bringing with it 5.9K up to 30p, 4K in an APS-C format up to 60p, Anamorphic 3.5K, and internal cinema 4K recording. Even more than that though, you'll get vector scopes, master pedestal controls, and the coveted shutter angle option. How's that sound? Let us know in the comments below.